Well, I spoke to Gary Hufbauer about Cuba and the EU. He's a senior fellow from the Peterson Institute for International Economics. I first asked him what Raul Castro hopes to accomplish during his trip.
There is not much investment in Cuba. It's under $500 million as far as we can estimate. And that's very small given the size. Dominican Republic, for example, has about $17 billion of investment. So Cuba, under $500 million, not very big. So he would like to get some French firms to come in and expand. And I think that will be the general thrust, as well as kind of a cultural approach that Cuba is a more normal country and, you can do business with us.
In the course of Castro's visit, France once again called for the U.S. to lift its trade embargo. So how much pressure is there for the U.S. now to move quickly once they see that all these other countries are making deals with Cuba?
Well, there may be some pressure from U.S. business firms, but there are plenty of congressmen who are absolutely against doing any more than what President Obama has already done in this recent announcement just a week or so ago.
Obviously, Castro isn't the only leader that's been making his visits to Europe. We also have Iran's President Rouhani also making his visit to Paris and signing a wave of deals. So when it comes to Europe's political and business leaders, what are some of the short-term benefits of these visits?
Well, now Iran has a lot more to offer than Cuba, to be honest. I mean, it's a big country. It'll get a lot of money as a result of lifting sanctions, and they plunked down a deal for 131 Airbus. I mean, that's a multi-billion-dollar deal. So naturally, the French were delighted to have Rouhani come. But Rouhani also wants Total and maybe some of the other French companies to begin reviving, is the way I would put it, the oil fields in Iran.
So we have these big, expensive, multi-billion-dollar deals now. What about in the longer term, those goals?
Well, that really remains to be seen. I think if the first deals go smoothly and go well, then that always opens up the path for further deals down the line. And we've seen that in other situations of normalization.
So it does pay to actually go in first and be the first ones to roll out the red carpet.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what France hopes to do in Cuba. I mean, there's already a certain number in fact, there are a large number of French tourists who go to Cuba. But naturally, Cubans would like to expand it more, have more charter flights and so on.
Now, speaking of rolling out the red carpet, we've seen European leaders really lay it out for Castro and Rouhani. But what about the one-sidedness? Is there a concern that perhaps that these meetings are one-sided, that only one side is getting a benefit?
Well, I mean, let's put it this way. The European firms which go in as a result or kind of ushered in by these deals, they'll get good commercial terms. But the political benefit will be mainly to Cuba. I mean, sure, Raul Castro would like to show more activity in the country, and he will get the political benefit. I don't see the big political payoff to the French or the European leaders from this initiative. But business payoff, yeah, that'll be good stuff.
And among the business payoffs, obviously we talked about the oil fields when it came to Rouhani's visit. What are some of the other key deals that really stood out to you?
With Iran, they would like to revive the auto industry. And they'd like to sell more, French autos there, or maybe even produce more. So that's another one. The banking. There's a country which has been isolated from the international banking community for stuff. To grow their business in Iran, and U.S. banks are not going to go in, but maybe these French banks will. So that would be another area where France could do fairly well.
We also know that China has maintained its relationship both with Iran and with Cuba. So how do you see Europe's changing interests towards these two countries affecting China's relationships with them?
Well, what China can sell to these countries is a very different menu of goods than what Europe can sell. I mean, Europe is, it tends to be high quality, pretty expensive, heavy machinery and so forth. What China can sell is basic. I mean, they make great shoes, which are inexpensive, and great clothes, which are inexpensive, and great cheap TVs, which are inexpensive, and smartphones too. And so they're producing a different menu. There's not a real trade competition between China and Europe because they're both producing and selling different menus of goods. From either Cuba or Iran, I mean, with Iran, what China wants is a reliable supply of oil. I mean, right now I know it's $30 a barrel and it's cheap and everybody's got all the oil they want, but the Chinese leaders, they look forward 10, 20 years, and they would like to have a long-term relation with Iran on oil. I mean, that would be the big thing.